for the school. So I don't have to tell you how important it is to know how to stay well or how to get better if you have become ill. So today's topics are timely and they're important. So as we get started, I'd like to ask Annie to come forward and offer a prayer, and after that we'll have our school children sing their theme song from first quarter.
Good afternoon. It's a blessing to be able to pray to the great physician, right? We can learn so many remedies, but we always need the touch of our Savior, who is the healer. So let's bow our heads together. Loving Father in heaven, I thank you so much for the natural remedies that you have given to us. So many of them are low cost, and they're such a blessing to restore our health. But we thank you most of all that when we are sick, when we are troubled, that your heart is full of love toward us, that you have power to heal, and that you will bless our humble efforts. So today as we learn, I pray that something that we learn today will be a big blessing to us, and that it will be an opportunity to share with other people too. Thank you for the gift of health. In your name we pray. Amen.
don't know. Yeah, I think it's working. It's always a joy to hear young children sing, and especially when they sing about the Lord. Your welcome this evening was given to you by Joan Starr. Joan Starr is the Educational Center Coordinator and teacher. She carries a big load for our children in teaching them. And she's assisted by Loretta Nevis. She's sitting right back here. And Judy Hovell over here also teaches the class. And then I sort of fill in a little on skills classes. And this program tonight is a joint effort between the educational centers and the health ministries of our church. And we're really happy to have Dr. Ron Fleck come and share with us. Dr. Ron Fleck is a man that goes out and ministers to many people. He is a doctor that works over in Tri-Cities, but he's got a spirit of ministry, of going to serve people. And many times I've heard him share about people have called him and they're sick in this crisis that we're in, and he's been a real help. And he's going to share the 3 stages that you need to understand that you might be faced with in this crisis that we're in. Plus, he's going to share a little about prevention. After that, as you have your program, you can look at it. We will continue down through the program. We will not be announcing it, but people will just flow right on through the program. Again, even though you've been welcome, we're very happy to have each one of you here tonight. And Dr. Fleck, thank you so much for coming. I think wouldn't it be easier for you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for coming out this afternoon. So I have a few disclaimers to make. Right now, it's a little bit dangerous for doctors to be doing what I'm doing this afternoon. Wired for sound.
Okay, try that. And you can just stick this in your pocket.
Okay. So they just passed an email to, I guess, most of the hospitals in the state of Washington that any medical doctor or nurse, that goes against the normative, the narrative. There you go. Any doctor or nurse that goes against the dominant narrative, against vaccines, against or promoting ivermectin or anything like that, will have their license revoked. And I would like to continue working for another 50 years. And so this afternoon, what I'm going to be speaking about is not going to be criticizing the CDC or criticizing Fauci or promoting ivermectin, so that you can all rest assured that I'll be careful and respectful for more than one reason. So I would like to let you know that we had a class here. It went for about 10 weeks. It was called God's Special Forces. And we had 41 people that graduated from this class. And somewhere I have the list of all the people that graduated here. And I would like to meet with all of those before you leave today. Every single God Special Forces. And that will not be broadcast. And that will be just me and them, and they're the ones that are going to be going out and helping people that are sick with COVID. So if you graduated if you're one of the 41 people that graduated and have a certificate, please stay, and we're going to have a special meeting just for you. And I'm going to share some of the latest things that we found out about COVID, which I'm not at liberty to talk about with everybody here. So how many, can you just raise your hand if you're a God Special Forces graduate? Okay. So if you got a diploma, if you got a certificate, we will have a special class. And there is something that just happened in town here, and that is Dr. Mark Mead's office was just canceled. He can no longer see patients. He's been taking care of a lot of people that had COVID, using things like intravenous vitamin C and hydrotherapy, and so far I don't think he lost a single patient. And they said that he can't work anymore. They closed his office down. He can't see any more patients there. And the technicality was that it's the wrong zone. It's not zoned for overnight patient care. And so they've closed him down as of last Thursday. So yeah, I know. Yeah, I spent yesterday afternoon with him. And so it's a little bit complicated because if you're seeing patients overnight, it's a little bit tricky to get a certificate of need. So what, am I having a problem? There you go, okay. Well, I don't know. So I told him, I said, you know, the time may have come when you're going to have to do home care, in-home care. And it's not going to be easy to have any kind of a clinic anywhere where you treat COVID patients. So we talked about doing home care, and I trained 41 people here and 41 people in Newport to be able to do this. And I already volunteered my graduates from here that when he has patients that have COVID and need hydrotherapy and they need natural treatments, that you will be available to go and take care of his patients. Obviously, you're not going to charge for this. And he's not going to charge for what you're doing either. We're just trying to save lives. That's all we're trying to do. So the people that took the course, 41 of you, and have graduated, and you've already know what to do, you know how to do it. Sherry's going to be here and go over the hydrotherapy all over again. Hydrotherapy is the #1 treatment for COVID. Back in 2018, approximately, 1918, when they had the big epidemic of Spanish flu, which didn't come from Spain, but they called it the Spanish flu. 1 out of every 3 patients going to the regular doctors and hospitals died. The ones that went to Battle Creek Sanitarium didn't die, any of them. I think it was almost 100% success rate. And they're using the very same methods then that we're going to be using now, that we are using right now. Natural remedies, primarily hydrotherapy and prayer and things like this. So I'm excited to share with you that it's like in the Bible, you know, it said that Esther, she came to the kingdom for such a time as this, right? And she saved the whole Jewish race. They were supposed to be back in Jerusalem, but some of them disobeyed God and they stayed there. And fortunately, because of her, most of them were saved. because she came to the kingdom just at the right time. And I believe that our God Special Forces are here and they were trained for this exact time. There's a big surge of COVID right now. I just talked to one of my best friends, and his daughter works at Sacred Heart. 7 patients died this weekend already in Spokane. And she works with these people in intensive care. So there's a big surge of cases. And I've seen just since I came up this weekend, two different patients that are really sick, and they're getting better now. But so I don't think there's any reason to be afraid. I have a sermon which I've preached in 2 different churches already. It's called Never Fear, God is Near. This is not the time for Christians to hide behind their face diaper and their curtains at home while people are dying of COVID. We have a health message so we can go and share, and we won't get sick if we're living the health message. That's why we don't eat a lot of meat. That's why we don't drink caffeine. That's why we don't drink alcohol, why we don't vape and we don't smoke. And we try to have a healthy lifestyle. Not so we can brag that Seventh-day Adventists live 7 or 8 years longer than everybody else, which they do, at least those that are following the health message. The reason we are given the health message is so we can go out and help people that are dying. Help people when no one else. One of the big problems with COVID is that the national standard is don't treat them until they get real sick. And it's backwards. It's never been that way in medicine before. If you come to me, your husband, you bring your wife to me, and I find that she has breast cancer, stage 1, what would you think if I told you, well, wait, take her home and wait a little while until it becomes stage 4, and then bring her back, and then I'll put her in the hospital. And I'll put her on the ventilator, and we'll get her taken care of. You wouldn't think very much of me as a doctor, would you? There's several groups of doctors in the United States, the frontline doctors. There's another group, they're called the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. And they have proven and they have shown conclusively that when you treat COVID patients early, hardly any of them ever die. There are doctors in this country that have taken care of 400 or 500 patients and haven't lost a single patient yet. One of them I heard, and he said that he lost 4 patients in the last 2 years out of like 800 that he's taken care of. And those 4 came to him after they already were just about dead anyway. Another doctor said that he lost a few patients and they wouldn't go to the hospital. I mean, they wouldn't come in and follow their early treatment. So I think that, like anything else, if you treat people early, that's the name of the game. The first thing is to prevent it. The second thing is to get early treatment. And the third thing is to make sure that the treatment you get is what you want. And the last thing you want is remdesivir, which is what you're going to get when you go to the hospital. And so there's about up to 50% chance of people that take remdesivir when they go to the hospital, their kidneys will be gone. And so it's a very, very toxic medicine. It never worked for anything before, and so for any pandemic before, and so I would advise to don't take remdesivir. So anyway, having given that little introduction, incidentally, I have some articles to back up some of the things I'm saying. And I don't know if Pastor Morgan is here. I thought I saw him a while ago. Or somebody that wants to run off some not right this minute, but run off some copies of everything that I have here. I'm not going to share everything with you because some of this stuff is a little bit confidential. And we don't want to get anybody in trouble. But it's very interesting. I want to share some incredible stuff with you right now. First of all, I wrote this about 1.5 years ago. And this is called Preventive Measures for COVID-19. And you'll also get a copy of this if you want. We'll have you make copies of this if you want it. First thing, just some bottom line stuff. Use exam gloves, surgical masks, disinfectants if you're taking care of a sick person. You don't have to run around the house, and like one poor lady in Pasco, Hispanic lady, about 75 years old, she was by herself, wore a mask all the time in the house, wore it all at night when she's sleeping, scared spitless that she's going to get COVID. She can't put her foot outside the door. And she thinks that by wearing the mask that that's going to help. It's sort of like putting up a wire chicken fence around your house hoping the viruses don't get through there. You know, this has never been shown in many conclusive studies to be of a lot of help. Now, having said that, I know that there's a lot of controversy about wearing face diapers, as they call them. I don't want to criticize anybody that wants to wear a mask. If that's what they want to do, you know, it's like one guy, I heard him say, he said, if you want to wear a face mask, God be with you, God bless you. I love you. If you don't want to wear a mask, God bless you, I love you too. And Governor Newsom, you know, in California ran for re-election, and I guess he made it through the challenge. And he did, I don't believe in his politics, but you know what he said? He said, we got people that want to wear the mask. He says, I love you. He says, some of the rest of you don't want to wear a mask. I love you too. That's probably why he passed through that recall, because he loves everybody, right? But that's what, I think we should not allow this to divide us. We should not allow the vaccine to divide us. One of our friends here has twin daughters, 50-year-old birthday in California. They said, Mom, you can't come and see us unless you're vaccinated. Her own daughters that she bore 50 years ago, she loves, and they wouldn't even want to see her unless she's vaccinated. Vaccinations and not vaccinations, that's caused churches to split. I know churches that are just about canceled out because people are fighting over masks. I know families recently, a young man told me his mother slammed the receiver down and hung up on him because she's so much in favor of the mask and he isn't. So this is ridiculous. If you want to wear a mask, wear one with pride if you think that's going to help you. But don't criticize other people, and I think I don't believe it should be mandated, and neither do a lot of other people. But I think that we should be very careful. If you are sick, if you have a runny nose, and if you're sneezing a lot and have a sore throat or a cough, don't come to church. Don't go to the store. Stay home. Stay away. I mean, that's common sense. We don't have to have a mandate from the governor for something that's common sense, which isn't very common sometimes. When somebody comes to prayer meeting and hugs everybody and they have a runny nose and a sore throat, and 2 days later they have a positive test, and then several people got sick in the prayer meeting, from the prayer meeting, I mean, that's not fair. So we need to be careful, right? We need to use our kidneys, our brains, you know. There's a joke about that, but anyway. Wash your hands regularly. If you're one of these kind of people that are always putting your fingers in your mouth, try not to do that anymore. Don't play around with your nose with your fingers, you know. Wash your hands frequently. When you wash with soap and water, warm water, make sure you wash for 20 seconds. Don't just go and then wash. Wash your hands good. Frequently during the day, especially before eating, after blowing your nose or sneezing, coughing, or going to the bathroom. We were always taught, you know, when I was growing up, when you cough or sneeze, you put your hand over your mouth. That's the worst thing to do. You should use your arm, not your hand. So you sneeze in your hand, and then you, how are you doing today? Just passing the virus right to the other person. So I know a lot of us have all been trained, to cover our mouth with your hand when you cough or sneeze. Don't do that anymore. Always use your arm. When you're sick or have a fever, stay home from work or school. Even if there's no one else to take your job at work, you're better just to not go instead of getting them all sick too. Drink a lot of fluids. Most of the people that I see that are really sick with COVID are dehydrated. They don't have an appetite because they've lost their senses of smell and taste, and they don't want to drink, and they're really lethargic, and so they just get dehydrated. And one of the patients I saw in Spokane, when we called the ambulance, the first thing we did is we gave her an IV, because I don't carry around IV solutions everywhere I go. And we hung the IV right up on the curtain rod and gave her some fluids. They took her to the hospital. And she had refused. One of our God Special Forces tried to give her hot packs and all these things, and she refused for 3 days. She went to the hospital. Fortunately, she survived, and she's now back home. Frequently clean objects and surfaces. I don't think you have to be paranoid about it, but it's not a bad idea to get some of those antiseptic wipes and clean off the draining board and things like that. Maybe your steering wheel in your car. Just take a few precautions like this. Keep your distance from people who are sick. Don't panic. That's probably the number one thing. There's no need to let fear and emotion drive your response to this virus. The most important thing is to remain calm. Don't believe everything you hear or read. People ask me all the time, what about the vaccine, doc? What about this? What about that? And I try not to tell them what to do. I just say, do your research. Not just from the CDC, do it from wherever you can. Look up some things. Pray. Ask God to help you. And then you'll know what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not my position. It's not Pastor Morgan's position. I don't think he wants to tell you what to do either, and I don't want to tell you what to do. But God will impress upon you the right decisions to make. The problem is that we don't have enough information. A lot of people, we trust people we've trusted in the past. My wife said, be sure and tell them today, we can't trust anybody except God. And I believe that. I mean, I hate to say that because I want to trust our pastors, I want to trust our close friends, but when it comes to our life and death situation, we trust God, okay? Hoaxes, lies, junk science have swirled around on social media and even, sad to say, on some of the official websites. Those of us that may feel one way are being criticized that we're stupid because we don't believe like everybody else is supposed to believe. And people are belittled and try to blame you if you don't go along with the crowd. This is not anything new. This is what happened in the past, right? Remember the 3 Hebrews? They were on the plains of Dura, and they put up this big image, and they said, when the music starts playing, you guys all have to bow down and worship that image. The music started playing, everybody went down. It would have been easy for them to say, well, let's just pretend we're tying our shoelaces. We don't have to be praying. We'll just be tying our shoes. No, they stood up. And then you know the rest of the story. They were thrown in the furnace, but they didn't get burned. And Jesus himself was in the furnace. When they came out, they didn't even have the hair singed on their eyelashes or eyebrows or anything else. And the fire was so hot in the furnace that when the people that threw them in were thrown in, I think they even got injured throwing them in. The people that threw them in, it was so hot, and yet they didn't get singed. God protected them. So just because everybody is saying, do this or do that, or if you don't do this, you're going to lose your job, or if you don't do this, you won't be able to travel to see your family, or you won't be able to do the Lord's work and you won't be able to go here or do that. Just do your research, pray, and God will show you what to do. Do whatever you can to keep your immune system strong. How do you do that? It just have a healthy lifestyle. Our mothers and our grandmothers used to tell us, eat your vegetables, right? They used to tell us, go to the bathroom every day. I mean, my grandma, she lived to be 106, and every morning she wanted to know if I had a bowel movement. And I said, Grandma, well, no, she said, that's important. And yet she lived to be 106 because I guess that was part of her health training, you know. And she died in her own bed at home, praise the Lord. And so get plenty of sleep every night. My grandma and grandpa had a farm, had 40 cows. They milked morning and night down in Longview, Washington. And my grandpa would get up at 3:30 in the morning, go out, milk the cows, come in, have a big breakfast. But I'll tell you one thing, when the sun was setting in the west, they were in bed. They had a little light on the top of their bed, and they would study their Sabbath school lesson, read their Bible, and then about a half hour later, the light would be out. And they say early to bed, early to rise, you know the rest of it. Makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? Drink plenty of, so we should get at least 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night. Adolescents need a lot more sleep, 8 or 9 hours, or even 10 sometimes. Drink plenty of water or unsweetened fruit juice, but water is best. Avoid sodas, caffeine beverages, and alcoholic beverages. Get adequate aerobic exercise every day. And some people, the only exercise they get is when they go to the refrigerator to open up the door, you know, to get some snacks. So we need to do some burst exercises. And if you've never heard of that before, go online and just type in low impact burst exercises. And it's where you can get a complete workout in about 15 minutes. So you start with like an exercise where you'll do this slowly, and then you'll just go faster and faster, and different ones, you know, until you get out of breath, and then you wait for a couple of minutes. Active rest is where you do this. You're just getting your breath back. You do this, and then you start doing your exercise. There's about 5 different ones you can do. And you can go online and get that. In fact, that's the way to reverse diabetes. I teach diabetes reversal classes. Type 2 diabetes can be reversed if you haven't had it for more than 10 years. Those exercises and diet get the fat out of your liver in about 6 weeks. Your hemoglobin A1C will go way down. Your blood sugar will go way down. And you'll probably be off of your medicines in a couple months. To get the complete cure, you have to get the fat out of your pancreas, which might take another 3 months. But this is amazing, the weight that they can lose. So burst exercises is really good. Don't start doing this until you check with your doctor to make sure you don't have a bad heart or something like that. Very important to not use tobacco in any form. Some people, they quit smoking, and so then they start vaping, which is way worse. And then they say, well, I'll just smoke marijuana now that it's legal. And marijuana is 15 times more irritating to the throat and the esophagus and the upper airway than tobacco is. Tobacco smoke. So you're not doing yourself a favor, plus marijuana causes what's called an amotivational syndrome, which means you don't have any ambition. That's why kids that smoke marijuana, they don't drop out of school, they don't have any interest, they don't have any ambition. So stay away from that kind of stuff. Adopt a healthy diet. Avoid any fad diets, whether it's the Beverly Hills diet or anybody else's diet. The only diet that's not a fad diet is called the Mediterranean diet, and that's a good diet. That's why those people live a long time around the Mediterranean, because they eat a healthy diet. by and large. Many athletes, firefighters, police departments, and others have found a plant-based diet is the best. Colin Campbell has written a book called The China Study, and he's gone around. He came to Walla Walla. I heard him one weekend, and he's promoting a plant-based diet. From there, he went to Seattle, and he spoke to the police departments and the fire departments and everything for all of Seattle. And many of these firefighters now are completely plant-based diet. A good book is called The Full Plate Diet. You can buy that online. But just go for a colorful diet. If you look at your plate and it's all light color like white or light brown or something, go for color. And that means you're going to have some vegetables, going to have some fruits maybe in the morning or in the evening. You want to have legumes, vegetables, fruits, nuts, whole grains, and don't overcook your food. Avoid excessive sugar, salt, fatty foods, too much oil and grease. When buying food, check the labels. If you can't pronounce the name of some of the ingredients, don't buy that. That's a pretty simple rule. Just look at the label. It's kind of a funny little story. There were two ladies in the health food store, and one of them says, "Oh, look at this. Look over here. This is so good." And they say, "Oh yeah, what is it?" She says, "Well, this doesn't have anything in it. Let's buy some of that." It has to have something in it, but just make sure you can pronounce it, right? Grow your own food whenever possible. Avoid unnecessary medications. You will be shocked if you see what I have to see sometimes. Somebody comes into the emergency room, 22 different medicines. 3 different blood pressure pills, sometimes in the same family of drugs. Maybe 3 or 4 heart medicines. A couple medicines for diabetes. Something for sleep, something to keep them awake. I mean, it's like 22 different ones, maybe 10 different ones. And this happens because they go to one doctor for one problem, get a prescription, then they go to another doctor, don't tell them what they're already taking, and each time they see a different doctor, pretty soon they have a whole collage of medicines. So avoid that. Avoid antibiotics unless absolutely necessary. Almost all the specialists in medicine, we all believe that people take way too many antibiotics. And then when you really do need it to save your life, it won't do you any good because you've already developed resistance. So save the antibiotics for a life-threatening situation. Just like ear infections in kids, they go to take the little Johnny in with the ear pain, earache, and there's an infection. And if she doesn't get an antibiotic, she's going to be angry and never come back to see you again as a doctor. But we know that 90% of those kids don't need an antibiotic. After Halloween, when they're out eating all the candy, next morning you can't believe the number of kids that come into the emergency room and the doctor's offices with sore throats and earaches from all the sugar. Happens every single year, every holiday. Try to spend 1 day a week resting, recharging your spiritual batteries. Develop a compassionate, helpful attitude toward others, and volunteer to help others whenever possible. Then also you drink this super tonic natural immune system drink, which you can get a copy of. It's real simple to make. All you need is a blender, 2 quarts of water, 10 lemons, 12 cloves of garlic, 1 cup of honey, half of an onion, 1 teaspoon of cayenne, 1 thumb-sized piece of fresh ginger, and an inch piece of horseradish if you're brave enough. So that's all you need, and this will keep the doctor away and keep you out of the emergency room many times. One thing you want to do maybe is to strain the pulp out, because sometimes the lemon, the rinds, can really irritate you and might make you nauseated or throw up. So don't do that. So and drink this whenever you feel thirsty, besides a lot of good water. So those are just some things. So that's how much time I have left. 15, okay. I always try to quit a little bit early if I'm given a time frame. That way they'll invite me back, maybe, you know. So as far as we have a protocol, well, there's a lot of different protocols of treatment for in-home treatment. There's this you can get online. You can download this and just print it off. It's called A Guide to Home-Based COVID Treatment, Step-by-Step Doctor's Plan That Could Save Your Life. And it's put out by the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. And it talks in here about what are the symptoms of COVID. How do you know if you have it or not? Step by step. 4 major pillars to how you can treat this pandemic. Contagion control, stop the spread of the virus, which we talked about. Early ambulatory home-based treatment, which we talked about. Late stage treatment in the hospital, only when it's life-threatening. And the last one is vaccination, which that's a questionable one. So this guide will focus on the pillar of early ambulatory home-based medical treatment overseen by your physician. The problem is if your physician doesn't believe in this, then find another physician that does. Okay, I'm sorry, but that's just what I would recommend. So the most important immediate way to reduce hospitalizations and death is to treat early. Okay. So I'm not going to go through the coronavirus. You know that it has these little spikes on it. But I'm just going to throw a little bug in your ear when you go home. If you have a computer, look up something called graphene oxide. Graphene. Graphene oxide. Okay, I'm not going to belabor the point, but this will give you a new look on life when you see what's being put in the vaccines and where it was developed and why they put it in the vaccines. So how deadly is COVID-19? Everybody's saying, well, am I going to die? I mean, that's natural, right? One of my best friends that we played music together, I played bass and he played the guitar. We were in a Christian band all over the Northwest, and he just was in the hospital. He had chronic leukemia, which I diagnosed about 7 years ago. So when people like that get COVID, it's pretty serious. And he called me like 4 days ago, or I called him. He was in the hospital, and we had prayer and everything, and I told him a few things to try. And Friday, he sent me an email and said, thank you for the prayers. I was sent home today. So he's going to make it. So I'm really, really, really happy about that. So the chances, okay, so let me back up here. Most of the deaths from COVID are in those 75 years and older. Fear is a common response. Most of these older people already have illness, and so the main ones is obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, autoimmune diseases, heart disease, and cancers of any kind, chronic pulmonary diseases, asthma, COPD, those kind of things. So the chances, if you're under 50 years of age and you get COVID, your chance of dying is 0.5% if you have early treatment. If you're 18 years of age, it's about 0% chance. Hardly anybody ever dies at that age group. Those that do have severe underlying medical conditions, maybe congenital heart disease or something like that, cystic fibrosis or whatever. There are roughly 7 times more children that die from flu than from COVID-19. The chance of someone under, let's put it this way, 99.9% of individuals who get COVID will have a mild to moderate symptoms and will recover just like the flu. The majority of deaths are coming from the 0.62% of population who are in nursing homes. And those people have one foot on a banana peeling and the other one is in the coffin already anyway. Many of those. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I love those old people and I take care of a lot of them. I used to have 120 geriatric patients in a nursing home where I was a medical director, and I love those people, but many of them are just barely alive anyway. So when they get COVID, it's just like, it's terrible. So the reason that people die from COVID usually is for 2 reasons. The first thing is that COVID goes to your lungs and it causes what's called a cytokine storm. It's like a chemical reaction, and it causes release of histamine and cytokine and all these inflammatory chemicals, like when you have an allergic reaction, you know, those chemicals that make your face turn red and your throat tighten up and you wheeze, and those chemicals. So that's an inflammatory reaction, and then it can leave the lungs and go damage other parts of the body. The second reason is the exaggerated blood clotting response. And so a lot of people get atrial fibrillation, which is the heart is beating in an irregular way, and that can cause blood clots in the lung, blood clot. You can also get deep vein thrombosis or clots in your legs or pelvic area, go to your heart or lungs, and you can die from that. Go to the brain, have a stroke. So, you can, we'll make some copies of this. We talked about the high-risk patients. What are the first symptoms? Are usually difficulty breathing or severe chest pain. But people just get lethargic, you know, they can't hardly move, they ache all over, myalgias. And the dangerous time is about from the 3rd to the 7th day, and that's when it really can hit. So the 3 most critical symptoms are fever, shortness of breath, pressure in your chest, and severe cough. And I'll tell you what Sherry's going to share with you about hydrotherapy. We use this all the time now. And I had a patient, this was Thursday night, a patient that lives over by Priest Lake, Priest River way. And his wife said he's really sick. He's lost 25 pounds in 3 weeks. He won't eat, he won't drink. And I said, well, it's about 7 or 8 o'clock. Can I come and see him tomorrow morning? And she said, oh, that'll be great. He'll be glad to see you. So I said, I'll tell you what you should do tonight. Start hot packs tonight. And I told her how to put hot fomentations on his chest every 5 minutes or so. Keep it nice and warm, as hot as he can stand. Finish off with a cold one, and then turn him over and do the same thing on his back. And do that, you know, tonight and tomorrow morning until I get there, maybe 2 or 3 times. So next morning I drove up there expecting to see him in that kind of a condition. And he sat up and, hi doc, how you doing? And his eyes were bright. And he said, ever since they started those hot packs, now I just feel like a new person already. And no medicine or anything. Because this stimulates the immune system when you're using hydrotherapy. And it also makes them breathe better because it relaxes the muscles around the airway. The bronchioles and the bronchi, trachea, bronchi, and the lungs, those muscles around there can go into spasm, and then they wheeze and they get real short of breath. And this graphene oxide, which I told you about, it's an oxygen sponge. It's a terrible toxic substance. And what it does when they get this, it causes the oxygen to go down. And sometimes when I get there, their oxygen level, instead of being 95, 96, 98%, when you put it on their finger, the pulse oximetry might be 88, 86, 84, because that graphene oxide just sucks the oxygen right out of the red blood cells. And so this is one of the things that you probably haven't heard before, but now you know. Just don't tell anybody where you heard it. So anyway, there's a whole list of symptoms that you can experience, basically if you feel sick. You have to think about it now, but in the pandemic. Loss of taste and smell, drop in oxygen concentration, rapid heart rate. A lot of times people can't think very good when their oxygen level gets down, like around 84, 85%. Pretty soon they don't make sense when they're talking, and they're making bad decisions. They might get irritable and cranky. So don't be upset with them. This is normal for anybody that happens to. So sunlight and fresh air are key components, plenty of fluids. If your urine is dark yellow or gold colored, that's not good. Gold is good for a lot of things, but it's not good if your urine is gold. That means you're dehydrated. Your urine is too concentrated. If you're drinking enough water, your urine should be pretty clear. Okay. Healthy food. Make sure at least get something down. Sometimes I ask them, what's one of your favorite comfort foods? One of my patients, he was really sick. His wife was afraid he was dying. We went over there. He hadn't eaten for over a week, lost some weight. He was really dehydrated. Yeah. 5 minutes, okay? And so I checked him, and he was very dehydrated. And I asked him, what would you like? What's one of your favorite foods? And he said, grilled cheese sandwich. She said, okay, we got it. She says, I was in the store yesterday and I got some fake cheese and some real cheese. And he said, I want the real stuff. So she made him a grilled cheese, and I said, what else sounds good? And he said, how about some tomato soup? And he said, that would sound awesome. And he started eating, and within about 3 days he was back again in the garden working. So it's amazing what you can do with a little hydrotherapy. As far as a high fever, you can use ice packs. You can put ice around a towel, put it on the abdomen, under the armpits. You can take some ibuprofen. Just be careful that there's food in the stomach when you take ibuprofen, or you can cause an ulcer. People that have had gastric surgery, for losing weight, their stomach is real small. They can't take ibuprofen or anything like that. So drinking lots of fluids. As far as testing, I recommend against testing. That's been found that there's graphene oxide even in the swabs. Another thing they're doing is they're taking your DNA. You ever think of that before? So there's just some other reasons. Most doctors, even the really good doctors, they're not waiting for a positive test for you to be treated. If you have all the symptoms, you don't usually need to wait for a test to treat. You can use the history and all kinds of things, to give you a good diagnosis. So those are just some things to think about. There's two different types of tests. One is an antigen test, and the other is an antibody test. So basically, my time is up, but I hope that I've given you a few things to think about. And this afternoon, I would really pay attention to the hydrotherapy, because this is the key. Now, the other thing which I do, and I've never seen this written up in any medical journal, every single patient that's very sick, I always pray with them. And it's amazing. I've never had anybody turn me down when I asked if I wanted me to pray for them. You know, usually they have a few tears in their eyes when they get done. They realize somebody cared enough about them to pray. I really believe that prayer is going to be the answer. And your treatment's going to be 100 times more effective, whatever you do, if you pray with them. And so thank you for your attention. One question, yeah.
What do you think about the monoclonal antibody for treatment?
Yeah, I was afraid somebody would ask that question. I don't have any personal experience using it, but I think it's effective in some cases. But I think if you do some research and find out how they make those monoclonal antibodies, you might not want to use them. Just do a little research and find out what kind of cancer cells they use to make that. So there are just a few things like that. Before you accept monoclonal antibodies, you might want to do some research. I had one lady that was our God Special Forces graduate from up in Shuila in Colville, and she did some research, and it's pretty shocking where those came from. And those have to be given usually in the hospital. So thank you for your attention, and I know you're going to enjoy the rest of the program and learn some life-saving things that don't cost anything. But it is hard. It's hard to give these treatments, especially when they're so weak they can't do it. And so sometimes the spouse is sick also. Or if they don't have an adult child to help the parents, or if the parents are both sick and can't help the child, it's good to have somebody else come in and do because hydrotherapy, to do it effectively, it's a little bit tedious, but it really, really works, and it doesn't have any side effects. So thank you. Yeah.
You have something you want. You have something extra?
Yeah, I'll get it. This is
My name is Sherry Wiedemann, for those who haven't met me yet, and I'm going to introduce Joy Hubble, who is one of our students, and she's got an original composition she's going to recite to us.
Hot or cold? Ellen White looked at the letter in her hand once again, and her brow furrowed in thought. Then she stood and walked quickly into her husband's writing room and over to the desk where he was writing an article for the Advent Review and Sabbath Herald. "James, I just received a letter from Dr. Lay," Ellen said as she laid a gentle hand on his hunched shoulder. "Oh, what does it say?" James asked as he straightened from his work. "Mrs. Lay is very, very ill, and he wishes us to come and pray for her. She isn't expected to live long," Ellen replied with a sigh. "We must go at once. The Lays are good friends of ours," James said as he arose from his chair. "I will go pack our bags," Ellen said as she hurried from the room. A sad look was on her face, as Mrs. Lay was a close friend of hers. "And I will go hitch up the team. There is no time to waste," James said as he took his hat from his hook and walked out the front door in a brisk manner. It was still morning, and if they hurried, they could make it to the Lays' house before dark. Soon they were on their way to Allegan, Michigan, where Dr. Lay and his wife lived. It was 35 miles away, and by horse and buggy it would take them many hours to reach the place. Upon arriving at the Lays' home, they were ushered into Mrs. Lay's room, where she lay in much pain upon her bed. No one except Dr. Lay and the town's physician had been in to see her. They looked very distraught, and she was delirious from her pain. "Why is she in such pain?" Ellen asked Dr. Lay very softly. "She has hemorrhage from the lungs, which is bleeding from the lungs. We don't expect her to survive the night," Dr. Lay replied with a grieved look on his tired face. "What are you doing to treat her?" James asked in a low tone. "We are putting on cold compresses," Dr. Lay answered simply. That is the worst thing you could do for her. You should be keeping hot water bags on her feet and on her lungs and stomach. The cold water and ice water applied to the lungs is diverting the blood from her limbs and body to meet the cold application. If this is continued, another hemorrhage will certainly appear very soon," Ellen quickly exclaimed, with a look of worry on her young face. "Why, this is sensible. Why did we not consider this before? We should have reasoned from cause to effect and seen what the cold would do to Mrs. Lay, the other physician exclaimed. Yes, let us apply the hot water bags to my wife, like Mrs. White has suggested, Dr. Lay agreed enthusiastically. This was done, and soon Mrs. Lay was much more comfortable with the hot compresses on her feet, lungs, and stomach. How long has she been ill? Ellen asked after the hot water had been applied. For 3 days she has been too ill to leave her bed, and we have not moved her for fear of hemorrhage, Dr. Lay replied. The next day, Mrs. Lay felt well enough to have her clothes changed by Ellen, and not many days later she was much improved. When they were leaving the Lay's house for their home a few days later, Dr. Lay stopped them and thanked them once again for their help and prayers. You have, by your counsel, saved the life of my wife. Thank you so much, both of you, Dr. Lay said with tears of joy and gratitude running down his cheeks. Ellen thought to herself that Dr. Lay was the most grateful man she had ever seen. Mrs. Lay lived for 20 years after that sickness, and it was all because of the natural remedies, mainly applying hot compresses and much prayer, that she survived. What are these hot compresses, and can they be used today? The answer is yes, they can. The hot water bags applied to Mrs. Lay are part of a procedure called hydrotherapy. This treatment for the sick, it can be used on much more than hemorrhages. During the 1918 influenza pandemic, hydrotherapy was used to cure many of the flu patients in the Adventist sanitariums. This is what many people attribute to the low death rates in those sanitariums versus the army camps and hospitals of the day. Today, we are here to teach you how to use methods of hydrotherapy to enhance the immune system and to treat many different ailments, including COVID-19 and the flu. I hope you enjoy learning how to treat disease yourself, at home and abroad. These natural remedies are easy and efficient, with no side effects except getting well fast and fully. Enjoy.
It's been a pleasure to be able to come and, well, I guess I don't need this one. About that. Thank you. Thank you so much. As I was saying, it's been a pleasure to come and teach the students of this special group. And I also want to thank the teachers of this group for allowing me to bring my neighbor girls who are also homeschooling. And today we just have a wonderful time of sharing what we've learned. So I've asked some of the students to have some demonstrations and share with you what they've learned. And now we're going to have Elizabeth Hickman and